Welcome to Compressed and Unplugged, the only show on the internet where we talk about music. We're your only choice.
I'm compressed.
I'm unplugged.
And this is Compressed and Unplugged.
Today, in proper basement show fashion, we're going to be listening to a classic selection from the 2000s, early 2000s Bush era punk revival scene. And we are going to be listening to a selection from a classic, a cornerstone of the punk scene, NOFX, led by my man, Fat Mike.
It's going to be a cornerstone, folks.
The name of the album that we're going to be listening to today is War on Errorism. It is NOFX's 10th studio album. Yes, you heard me right, 10th out of their current 17. This is an old head band. You might have heard some of their classics from back in the day in 1983 when Fat Mike got this group of hooligans together in Southern California they were a foundational band in the creation of the Southern California punk scene, them along with Dead Kennedys and Black Flag, although Black Flag is not from Southern California. And so we're going to be listening to their 10th album, which came out a solid 20 years after they were formed in 2003. And I've got a picture of the little album cover here, and as soon as you take a gander at it, you can tell exactly what it's about, exactly why they wrote it. This is a Bush era anti-Republican, anti-Bush protest, quote unquote, album. And indeed, Fat Mike was very involved in that kind of counterculture. One might even say that he was one of the founders of that counterculture of that time. He founded several different organizations that aimed to get punks involved in electoral politics and basically get them to vote out Bush. Because, not a very little known fact, pretty well known fact
That
actually.
worked.
It did, actually.
It did not.
In 2004, Al Gore became president.
This is an incorrect statement. George W. Bush stayed in office for 2 terms. IDKWTF Unplugged was on about here. I kinda thought it was a bit.
He wasn't running that year, but he got elected. And
That worked.
he's sipping some water right now, like the little Kermit meme. 2018 called. They want their shitty meme back.
For context, there's George Bush in some clown makeup on the album cover. You said it, but
Oh yeah,
there it is.
I meant to
There it is.
explain that.
Some really choice font on the War on Errorism part.
Oh, that just gives you early 2000s
It's like
vibes right there.
Impact or something. It's pretty fire.
I think that's the same font they used for Green Day the Musical.
I think it actually might be Impact, which apparently is possibly the one
So
used for Green Day the
unfortunate.
Musical as well.
That's so sad.
There's
Anyways,
so much lore in this episode.
there's a lot of lore. This is a big lore-heavy episode. So this album was released in the midst of Rock Against Bush and several other marketing campaigns and fundraising kind of campaigns to get punks to the polls and get them to vote out George Bush. And this
That
was released
worked.
in the midst of that.
That worked.
Yeah, it did.
It did not.
This album is almost entirely anti-George W. Bush and anti-establishment political music, which actually, this is a little weird for one of the foundational punk bands of the last 40 years, but NOFX, and in particular Fat Mike, was pretty uninvolved politically before 2000.
Yeah.
And
Very-
in
very
2000,
odd
yeah, it is
for a
weird.
punk band.
Yeah, so he went a full almost 20 years of his career before he even voted in a general election. Not even in just a general election, just in general. He was 33 before he ever voted in an election. And that was his first election was 2000, which he voted for Al Gore. Big surprise. After that, he started getting more and more involved, and this is kind of him looking back on the first 3 years of his political awakening, which I think you'll be able to tell in the songs and the lyrical content. This also is an interesting album because it came out right when they switched record labels from Epitaph Records, their original company, to Fat Wreck Chords, which is Fat Mike's aptly named record company that he started with his wife. Yeah, so this album has a lot of themes of anti-authoritarianism. There's a lot of themes of like punky energy, you know, like kind of like a gleeful, like destructive energy, I guess I'd call it. And there's a lot of like he's trying to create an idea of what he thinks Americanness means, which you heard in the song that we listened to earlier, Franco and American, which is not the lead single, but it is the most popular single off of the album. Yeah, and musically, NOFX in general, and I think this album is a really good example of it. NOFX does a good job incorporating different musical ideas into their playing. So as you go, you're going to hear some ska. You're going to hear some ska. You're going to hear some like skate punk. You're going to hear some hardcore punk. You're going to hear a little bit of like kind of poppy synths. You're going to hear like just a good mix of everything. And with that, let's take it away.
Let's jump into this baby.
Now listening to War on Errorism by NOFX.
So, something that's important to understand about the context of this album is it was released in 2003, right? Which was only a couple of years after the emergence and subsequent music domination of pop punk in the mid to late 90s. And that's important because a lot of this album is textually him responding to the pop punk community and him making commentary about the punk community, which now includes pop punk kids. And personally, I have a different interpretation of all of this, which I could totally be 100% wrong. My idea for this whole album is that the reason they put these songs all together is because it's a story of Fat Mike coming to realize the problems with the world and trying to figure out a path forward, a healthy path forward that's not him engaging in acts of self-destruction or him letting his newfound awareness of capitalism and the destruction of the environment and all of these terrible things, him not letting that awareness consume him.
Mm-hmm. I definitely heard that.
For sure. And in this track listing, it's a little weird. It totally could be random. It could have a theme, and then there's some like random bits thrown in there.
There's a few things that threw me off with that, but
for sure, yeah. A couple of the songs just seem a little out of place.
Yeah.
A handful of these songs, I think like maybe 3 of them are from earlier projects that were re-released, recovered and re-released for this one. So that might be it. I don't exactly remember which ones are new and which ones are old, but that might be a reason why there's a little bit of a scattershot way to it. But I think the way I listen to it at least makes sense, if not is the intent behind the arrangement of the album.
Mm-hmm. War and Errorism. I liked it. It was very fast, as he would say, perhaps. It was very fast.
It was indeed. That's punk.
I was really vibing in the beginning. There was a little bit of like, I'm going to talk about it more generally in a second, but a little bit of a lull, or more specifically rather, a little bit of like, there were a few songs in the middle that kind of threw me off, which I will talk about more in specifics. But then towards the end, it kind of picked up steam again for me. So I really liked all of the. There's a few songs when he's like talking, quite a few songs when he references like other bands. That's every song sounds the same, and I think there is a good amount of variety on this. I do think there's like I felt like a little, just as someone who maybe this is just because I don't like love punk music, but it felt a little ironic to me. Like in a lot of the music does sound very similar and similar to a lot of other punks. So it like and I know when people say that they don't like literally mean like you need to like have songs that sound insane, but that was like a little ironic to me, just because it wasn't the most like out there like different sounding thing I'd ever heard. So
I mean, you do also have to consider that punk is a pretty limited form of art, all things considered.
yeah,
There's a very established formula.
there's an established formula. Yeah. Um. So I'll talk about a few of the songs. I really liked the first four songs. I'll say 5 songs. I liked, so that's going to be Separation of Church and Skate, Irrationality of Rationality, Franco and American, Idiots Are Taking Over. Those were like the political like bangers, I guess, those were like, until kind of the end, the most like directly political and just like banging songs, I thought.
I agree. That the first half of the album definitely slaps a lot harder.
Yeah, it goes really hard. I really liked how like just on the nose. I mean, with all these songs, his like writing style is very like blunt, to the point, kind of on the nose. Like there's not a lot of, there are some like metaphor, whatever, but it's not super flowery for the most part. It's pretty like direct to the point. So that works really well.
He didn't want you to get confused.
Yeah, no, it works really well with like the first 4 songs and all the really political songs. I really liked She Nubs too, even though it was like a very different vibe. It was funny and sweet. There were these like guitars that were really cool, I thought. They sounded cool, and I liked that song. So she was a fan. I just kind of want to hear this story again. Right? She was a fan that met Fat Mike.
Yeah, so this song, She's Nubs, is actually about I don't think quadriplegic is the right term. She was born without her arms and legs, but she was a big fan. I think still is. She should be. They wrote a song about her. A big fan of NOFX, and after she went to a show that they did in Toronto, she met him, and I think they went out for drinks and got to know each other a little bit. And then he called her, I guess, somehow, I guess he got her number or something, even though he was dating somebody at the time. I don't know. He's Fat Mike. Yeah, so he called her later and asked if he could write a song about her, and she said, yeah, sure, of course. Like, you're not going to say no to that. And then he's like, okay, cool, I have it here. I'm going to play it for you. And so she heard it first through her phone, and he called her while the entire band was there, and they had just finished putting it together. And so he played it for her, and she really liked it. That's crazy. And, yeah.
Mattersville was good, too, I guess. It wasn't my favorite, but I liked it. The marimba was nice, and the female vocals with, like, the marimba were really nice. So I had another question about, like, the lore of this one, because you talked about this, but I wanted, like, to ask. So they lived together for when? When did they live together?
Well, so the entire band...
NOFX lived together.
Yeah, the entire band grew up together.
Okay.
In the same suburb. And this is kind of a hypothetical future in which they're all getting old, which they kind of are old in terms of the music industry at this point. But this is a hypothetical future of him and his band growing old and then living in this gated community together with a bunch of old punks and just having basically an anarchist commune, I think was the idea. And it's just like, I love my friends. I want to go fucking live with them and do my vibe, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward song.
Yeah, so that one was good. And then we get to Decomposer. And so I'm not sure if I was like, if I really like maybe just misinterpreted it. But there were a few like parts of the song that sort of threw me off, where I was like not entirely sure what it was trying to say. So
yeah, this is one of the ones...
What did you say before we listened to it again? You kind of said that it was like...
Well, so this is definitely the one I have to reach for hardest in terms of this lens that I'm using to
Right,
view the album.
right.
This
for
one
sure.
is kind of just a monkey
And
wrench.
She's Nubs, but that one is kind of just like
I think that one's just him.
it makes more sense in a way almost.
I think She's Nubs, he's using this particular fan as an allegory for the scene,
Yeah.
in that he loves this fan and he loves the scene, and like that's his connection to the world. You know, because these past couple songs we've been listening to before this are all like, oh, the world's gonna end, capitalism is destroying the world, the whales are all dying, what the fuck are we gonna do? And then he comes to this song about, oh, here's this fan that I met that really made me feel good, and I really like her, and I'm just happy that we got to meet, and we got to share something that we're passionate about. And
Yeah.
so I think that is meant as an allegory for the entire community. So I think that one fits in a little bit better, but this one, Decomposer, that is just kind of weird. It's kind of like, I think it might, actually, now that I think about it, I think it fits more with the theme of him, like, kind of shitting on pop punk. It's kind of like him making fun of a love song kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because pop punk has a lot of those, like, you know, those stereotypical, like, scene kid in the early 2000s, oh, I hate the world, but I love you, aha, kind of vibes. And this is him kind of saying, like, well, I hate the world, and I also hate you, but I still want to fuck you. So,
Okay.
I think that might be a
So-
better way to look at it.
I guess I got confused about it, this one. Like I said, sort of threw me off. I said, I'm not really in the punk scene, but I know that women have had to fight for their place in this scene, as they have with many other genres and countercultures. But having a woman as a placeholder for like the poser in this song wasn't like so bad on its own. Because this one I think is maybe one of the most like sort of flowery and poetic with its language. It's not like super direct like a lot of the other ones are. That's why it confused me. But then there was like, everybody wants to save her from herself. They really want to save themselves. But that gave me the vibe of like the like dude at like a punk show or something who's like trying to be like soft and sensitive to this girl who like is a model of disaster with a heart of revolution or whatever. Just like basically like being like a soft guy, a nice guy, like to like fuck some girl at a punk show. That was what that line made me think of. And so this song, there was something about it that was like kind of throwing me off, and it didn't seem to fit the vibe of the rest of the album. That was just how I sort of felt from one listen. I don't know.
I think that could definitely be. I do like that.
Like, I don't think the dude's sexist, but I think that like something about this song just kind of.
There is, at the very least, a latent sexism there. I don't think it was intentional. Frankly, most sexism isn't, though, so that doesn't really excuse it. But I do think that it wasn't a coincidence that it was about a woman.
Yeah, for sure.
And this isn't in the heat of like the girl punk girl like counterculture movement.
Yeah, this was like after.
It was a little bit after it, but it was still close enough, and also close enough to pop punk, which is notoriously misogynistic.
I did not know that.
Yeah, all of those stereotypes of like the punk that dates, he's like 30 and he dates high school chicks.
Yeah,
that's like
yeah.
a pop punk thing.
Gotcha.
That wasn't really a stereotype
Interesting.
before the late 90s.
So that context actually like makes this more interesting, I think. This would probably be more interesting if I really like had all the context for the change and the pop punk scene's rise and all that stuff, but
yeah. And
Okay.
like the
Interesting.
like the peak of the like Riot Girl phase was in the like early mid 90s. So this also isn't too far away from that. So I don't think he was actively trying to comment on this kind of stuff, but it definitely shows you what was going on at the time in the music. And there's definitely some sort of latent sexism in which he used a woman as an object to discuss how he felt about the scene and how he felt about the way that the scene is changing.
Okay, interesting. Well, that kind of clears things up a little bit, I think, actually. But still, I will still say that that song and the next few, not well, this is still the section that I didn't enjoy quite as much because I think it wasn't like directly political. It was like kind of all over the place. Good, mediocre. So I do think that they had a really like good varied sound throughout this album, like you were saying. But just in general, these like music sounds too similar and like people repeat chords or whatever. That like this is just like me personally, that those kinds of arguments always like come off as a little silly to me, you know? Cuz like so much is like repeated and just like reinterpreted ideas. Like nothing's like truly original. And I don't think Fat Mike literally thinks that. I think for the sake of like writing a song that like sounds good and makes sense, that's kind of like the language you use to talk about those sort of concepts of like originality in music.
I think that it's kind of, sorry to interrupt, but I think he's kind of expressing a vague, not really well thought out like anger at the scene, because I think what he's really mad at is the commercialization of punk.
Yeah, and that's way more fair. That is very fair.
It's like punk is a music that they had to sanitize before they could commodify. Yeah. And so I think he's upset that this thing that is like, he started this band when he was like, what, 16? And so this is his life. This is his identity. He's been doing it at this point for 30 years. And then now at this point that I'm currently saying, almost 40. And so like, he's very invested in this. And I think it struck him as like a personal thing when they started sanitizing and commercializing punk rock. And I think this is early enough to where he doesn't know exactly what he's mad at. He just knows that, oh, it just all sounds the same and they're not really saying anything. Yeah. Which they kind of aren't. Like, yeah, I listen to a lot of like shallow, like I listen to punk rock. I mean pop punk. Believe it or not, I do listen to punk rock. I listen to pop punk. I listen to like alt rock. I listen to all sorts of music that is clean and commercial, but so I'm not saying that there can't be content there, but this is explicitly a sanitization and commercialization of a scene that is anti-sanitization.
Yeah, it's like it's very, the like commercialization of pop is very of punk rather is very ironic, like, and stupid. I completely agree with that. For sure. So that just like again comes in, I think, with the context where it's like, in this context, I that's like an argument that like I think holds a lot of weight and I agree with and I like would support. I think that argument gets brought, like, I was like just listening to the words, you know, and I think that argument gets brought up a lot against music that I like, quite a bit, and I think it's stupid in this context because so much of the music I like is like oriented around things like sampling and remixing and like changing things. But like with this, it's a totally different genre, and what he's talking about, the like kinds of like unoriginality that he's talking about are very different from the kinds of unoriginality that people throw at like hip hop and electronic music.
I also want to like
there's also some similarities though with the commercialization stuff that you could apply.
For sure. I think right now hip hop is going through a kind of sanitization and commercialization process in and of itself.
I don't know. I think hip hop, that's a conversation for a different time.
Okay.
I disagree. But it's also true that like hip hop is the new pop. So the hip hop, I guess that's the thing. The hip hop pop it is happening. You're right. But I think there's also a lot more experimental stuff that's exploding right now because of the internet. Anyway,
there's a whole bucket of worms.
It's like the same conversation.
I have a slightly different conversation that is also a conversation for another time, but I just wanted to touch on, I always find it funny when punk rock does this a lot, and I get what they're saying. They're not actually trying to say that they care that they only use 4 chords. They're trying to say like most pop music doesn't really say anything of substance, which is just a fact, because if it did, then it wouldn't be as popular, because there would be people that disagree with it. But they always use this argument of, oh, we only use 4 chords. It's so simple. It's not very interesting. But actually, when you look at the theory behind contemporary music, especially rock, I mean, it starts to get a little diluted when it goes to hip-hop and electronic. Not diluted as in like a bad thing, but like it's starting to morph into something else. Yeah. But when you look at the theory of rock and pop, especially in this time period, it's completely different from jazz theory, completely different from classical theory. It literally could not exist with more than maybe 6 chords at max. And 4 chords is the optimal use of this kind of theory. Just to touch on it briefly before I go off on a tangent about it, basically the theory behind contemporary rock is this 4 chord structure, is that there are 2 tonics that you hear, as opposed to when you're listening to classical music, you can always hum the tonic, you can feel when it goes home. In rock music, there's 2 tonics, and then there's 2 vague transitional chords that go from one tonic to the other. So you can never really tell where the home is. You can never really tell where it ends. You have to listen to the melody for that. And so it's a very simplified version. Not even like a version. It's just a very simplified, completely different kind of theory from anything before it. But like literally, if you might be able to squeeze in 2 more chords maximum before it wouldn't make any sense. So this whole argument of, oh, there's only 4 chords, oh, the world's gonna end, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Cool. Facts. Get owned.
Go back to
You
school,
people.
liberals.
Okay. All right. Anarchy Camp. I think I probably would have had more to say about this song, but I was kind of like finishing up my thoughts about both Decomposer and Mediocre while kind of listening. But it kind of picked up the energy. I liked the ska. The like sax was really nice. 13 Stitches. I really liked the like radio filter, like compression or whatever the hell.
Well, I meant
over
to
the drums. That was cool.
I want to give you a little bit more context for this one too. I meant to say it earlier, but I just didn't. So this song in particular, 13 Stitches, is about Fat Mike's memories of him first getting into punk way back in the day.
I could definitely tell from the lyrics.
And 13 Stitches is about a
So
time.
it gave it like a really nostalgic kind of radio-y feel, which was cool.
That's what I think that
Feel.
like filter was there for, was because he got into it in like the late 70s when it wasn't very high quality, especially because like the distortion they were using was like stabbing holes in amps. That's like how they got distortion back
Holy
in those
shit.
days. So like
Fire.
it was really fuzzy and really hard to understand what was going on. So I think that's why he used that. But also like 13 Stitches, the name comes from, he was at a show and he cracked open his head or something and he had to get 13 stitches on it. And if you like look at this right now, I'm looking at the lyrics on Genius, and like it's just almost entirely links, because there are so many like obscure OG punk scene references.
That one
in
was
it.
great. I was like not even opening things on that page. I was like, nope.
Yeah,
Just a bunch of bands.
these are all just nostalgic memories for him. Like
This
John
and
Macias.
the previous song. Sorry, this and the previous song were just like full of fucking little genius
Just
links.
kind of him flexing his punk
punk
clout. His punk cred. Sorry, that's the term.
Oh, okay, cool.
But like John Macias, his name is dropped in here. I didn't know who that was. He apparently, this band isn't on Spotify. They only existed for like 3 years in the early 80s. But apparently they had a big influence on him, and this dude apparently beat somebody to death because he had long hair or something, and he was a punk singer. But like this is just this, you can tell this song means a lot to Fat Mike, and you can tell it's really something not necessarily that he hesitated to share, but something that hits close to home.
Regaining Unconsciousness was a really good return to the politicism.
Can I touch on something here?
Yeah, sure.
This actually just occurred to me, but this Regaining Unconsciousness is all about class solidarity, right? It's like, you know, they came for the homosexuals, and then they came for the black people. They came for them, now they'll come for you, kind of thing. And I think the title is an ironic play on words. I think he's talking about class unconsciousness, which I had never gotten before.
It's funny. That is funny.
Yeah.
Whoops, I OD'd. I mean, this song was like pretty crazy, honestly. I think the thing that like definitely stuck out with me the most was just like the way he delivered it, like like breaking in between like verses and like just like lines of lyrics, just like cutting them in half, kind of to like give this like last moments of life, like you're clinging on for bare life, just trying to get your last words out. Was kind of the vibe, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure as a guy that's been in the punk scene for at this point almost 40 years, he's had close calls with that kind of thing. He's definitely known and had friends that have OD'd, and so he's definitely seen a lot of this up close. So you can tell, again, that this one hits home for him, and also I think he has a good perspective from which to write it. Especially if my my lens through which I view this album is correct. I think at some point he probably had at least vague, like, suicidal thoughts, and this is him saying, yeah, that's not the way to go, you know? Here's why, there's so much more, you know? And I think I would rearrange the track list in a lot of ways, but I don't think I would ever make this one not the last one.
Yeah, for sure. This was a strong way to close it out, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. War on Errorism. I think we covered it all.
Are you going to add any of these to any of your playlists?
Well, I already added the separation of church and state, and irrationality of rationality. She's nubs, I might add. Whoops, I OD'd. I'll be adding to... I don't know where I'm going to put any of these, because punk is like... I don't normally put it in my playlist. So right now they're just in my monthly playlist, but those are the keepers on first listen.
I'm surprised you didn't say Franco and American. That one's my favorite.
I don't know. I liked a lot of songs a lot more than Franco and American, honestly. I know we listened to it last night, and normally just like that on its own would like probably like make me associate it with like familiarity and want to pick it. But I don't know. I ended up liking a lot of these songs a lot more than Franco and American.
That's a surprise to me.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe I'll pick something a little bit harder next time.
Oh, something I wanted to talk about, just like generally, was that there were a lot of kind of like, I think maybe Franco and American had it, or maybe it didn't, I don't know. A lot of like, kind of like guitar licks and like drum lines that weren't like quite in tempo, they weren't quite syncopated. I really liked that. That gave it like a really like unbridled, like moving forward, like energy feel, like in a really good way. So
That's
I
not
that
very uncommon in punk at all.
I'm sure it's not, but I noticed that on a few songs, and it was like there was one song when the guitar started and it like sounded like almost funny, but like I figured it would sound better, but once the beat kicked in, it was good. Yeah.
You should listen to NOFX's first album. There you can tell
old
that
was he then? 16? Is that
something like that. He was pretty young. You can tell that they were just starting to learn their instruments, and his voice hasn't completely fallen yet, because he's still going through puberty.
Yeah.
So there's like voice cracks, and there's like out of time guitar, and like the bass misses a couple notes in one place. Oh, also I meant to say this at the beginning of the episode, but NOFX is weird for another reason in that their lead singer Fat Mike is their bassist. He's not their guitarist.
Oh, yeah. Crazy.
Fun fact.
Fun. Very fun. All right. I'll give this baby a score, and then I think we're out of here.
I don't think I gave it a score, so I'll give you mine after you give me yours.
Okay. I've been thinking about this because I think I'm gonna play it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a 7. I was like considering giving it a 6 until we like talked about it, and then like it kind of made me rethink a few things about Decomposer, Mediocre, especially. Those were the ones that were giving me the most hang-ups. So I think I'll give it a 7. Still, I think that like kind of the middle section didn't capture me as much, and for being a short album, there's a lot of songs on it, and not all of them were like super memorable to me. So that's why I'm going to give it a 7. But I did really like the parts that I liked, and even the songs that didn't stick out as much weren't really bad, especially once we like talked about them and like kind of got that understanding of of the context of the punk scene or whatever that helped. So yeah, 7.
I can live with that. I think this is definitely my favorite NoFX album. And I agree with a lot of things you're saying. Like, some of these songs don't really need to be on here. I'm looking at you, Decomposer.
Not necessarily bad.
It's not bad. It just doesn't really fit the theme.
Kind of takes you out of it just
It's
a little bit.
little weird.
That's how I felt.
Personally, I would probably rearrange it if I were remaking the album, but I like the way the track list starts on, like, some bangers and then comes down for a little bit and then goes back out.
Yeah, that part makes sense. Just, like, the flow of it isn't bad.
The flow of it is pretty good. There are a couple of extraneous songs on there, but for the most part, I think it's pretty good. I listen to all the songs on there on a regular basis, so there's none of them that I don't like, even Decomposer. But yeah, so I think I'm going to give this one an 8.
8.
I think it's come down in my mind since I've listened to the full thing again.
It's come down in my mind too. I'm going to give it a 6.
Fuck
because
you.
I'm
Fuck
just like
you.
thinking, even the songs that I do like, there's only like going to be like, I'm giving it a 6. I'm sorry. I did not dislike it. I liked it. 6
Sounds
is
like
still
you
a good
disliked
score.
it. That's not a
Still
good score.
Some
60%.
of the songs, like, some of the songs were like 8s or 9s. Some of them were fire. But
You can give it a 6.5 if that's more reflective.
yeah, I'll give it a. Okay, yeah, let's do digits. Let's just do half digit. That's good.
Couldn't we?
I'll
I
give
thought
it a
we've
6.
always been doing that.
I feel like I haven't been, but that's fine. 6.5.
Okay.
Charlie's an 8.5. No, Charlie's still an 8. I don't know.
I was going to give this one an 8.5, but just because of the extraneous songs and, like, it's a short album, but it still kind of drags just because it doesn't all fit the same theme, and it's not all really in the same tone. So just because of that, I'm going to knock off a half point. But
Gotcha.
I'm going to stick with an 8 out of 10.
Cool. 8 and a 6.5. That sounds right to me. Cool. Sick. Epic.
Wunderbar.
Now listening to 2017 to 2019 by Against All Logic.
All right. I like that album. That was a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. I figured you would.
I did.
I had a sense after last week that you would like this one maybe even more.
I definitely do like this one more than last week.
I'm not surprised.
I
do too.
I didn't think I was going to like it, but I did.
Because it was like just I kind of thought you would feel that way because there was like no words and it's just like all like it's like this is probably the closest thing to like just like an EDM album that you've ever listened to. I guess it technically is because all EDM means is electronic dance music. I feel like especially because we're in Boulder, spoiler alert.
Oh God!
Don't dox us.
Don't say that.
But because we're in Boulder, especially, there's like a really just the word EDM has this connotation of like what I think should more rightfully be called. One of my friends I think called it just like frat boy EDM. Like that's its own thing. That is, but like some people think that like all EDM is kind of like that.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Like it literally just means electronic dance music. It's like
It's a very broad
term. Like this is like, I mean, there's a bunch of subgenres you could throw onto this, but yeah. So yeah, let's anyway.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. That's definitely the preconceived notion I went in.
What I figured. Yeah.
Went in with when I listened to this. But I was very surprised to hear that there was a lot of textural variety in his in the way that he produced these sounds. There was dusky, dirty, rubbery, and squeaky, and then blown out and metallic, and it was all in good balance. One of my biggest complaints with the EDM that I've heard so far is it's all plasticky or it's all metallic-y, and there's no other texture in it whatsoever. And he definitely did not do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think there's, as you can probably tell, a lot of it is samples, drum loops, or him probably. I don't know if he does it, or I don't really know his process. I don't know if he's banging pots around or if he's just getting sounds of it. But clearly a lot of very material sound. You can feel the materiality of the sound. It's not just an abstract or a synthesized symbol, whatever. It's very
It's deliberately made to sound a certain way.
Yes, for sure.
It also this is another preconceived notion with EDM that I had, is that it's very repetitive. And it could get a little repetitive in spots, but overall it had a very good, like, direction to it. It was always going somewhere. It was morphing into something else. Actually, it was very similar to the experience of listening to classical music, especially, like, late romantic kind of classical music. It was very much like, here's, like, a broad sweeping gesture of what's going on, and then there's, like, this other motive that's creeping in, and eventually it'll take over and that'll become the main motive. It was surprising. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's like, that's an interesting way to describe it, or like think about it. To me, it's like kind of like a journey or something. It's like very cinematic, which is, I guess, also sort of reminiscent of like classical music, because obviously that's what, you know, movies use. That's a weird thing. I don't need to clarify that movies use orchestral music.
Are you sure about that?
Well, I'm gonna cut that one out. That's like just so
You gotta
fucking
keep
stupid.
that.
But yeah, it's just like, it's very like cinematic, and like it's like a journey. Like it's like an emotional, like, sonic journey that you're taking.
Yeah.
Which is similar to like classical music. I mean, obviously it's very different, but just like that, like, way of experiencing it is something that is similar with the two. Yeah.
It's very, like, intimate but also abstract at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is a weird feeling to have.
It's our rival podcast.
Oh God.
Intimate and
Abstract. God, I hate those guys.
Don't listen to them.
Don't even, like, look them up. You'll get hooked. It's not even once.
It's so good. Don't listen to them.
It's not good.
It's so good.
It's so
much
bad you can't. It's like a train wreck.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Glad we clarified.
Yeah. So I had more to say about that. I forgot what it was.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no. I looked it up and then started talking about intimate and abstract. I just got so heated.
Oh, okay.
I really liked on With an Addict. It literally sounded like cyberpunk West African polyrhythmic drumming. It was like literally, it was polyrhythmically motivated, which you don't ever hear in Western music.
Can you maybe explain that to the audience who might not know, and me? I mean, I know, but just to the audience.
Explain. Tell me what you think it means.
Oh no, I think we should let it come from the polyrhythmic master, as he's been called.
I don't know if I would call myself that.
Polyrhythmic Polly, he's been
if
called.
If you're gonna call me polyrhythmic Polly, I guess I'll accept the title.
All right, Polly, let's take her away.
A polyrhythm is a very fancy word for when one rhythm with a certain kind of subdivision, which could either be 2 or 3. Those are the smallest subdivisions that you can really get, and they materially sound different. By the way, maybe I should clarify the word subdivision means the beat divided. That's all it means. So you have 2 different subdivisions, one that's divided in 2, one that's divided in 3, and they're playing over each other, but it is expounded upon to be like an entire song long, or like an entire verse long or something. So, for example, a very popular polyrhythm would be like 5/8, which is like a subdivision of a beat in 5 different equal beats over a subdivision of a beat in 8 equal different beats. So it really just, it's a very fancy word for saying that beat pattern. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And like, really when you hear it, it just sounds kind of like chaotic. And the only reason I know how to identify that is because I've heard polyrhythmic music before, which is another part of modern classical music, is polyrhythms, especially in percussion. But like, I couldn't even tell you what the polyrhythms were. It takes a lot of time and effort to like figure out what they are, and then let alone reproduce them. So I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting to hear something that was like, to me it has this connotation of like, it's just otherworldly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like I'm in like West Africa 21,000 AD, and like this is fucking Wakanda now, and this is the music they listen to.
Holy shit!
It was so good.
Yeah, that one's crazy. I that's interesting Interesting, the explanation of polyrhythm. I think before I played it, I was like, it's like off kilter. That's what I said. But yeah, that makes sense now. It's like, you're like, you just want to move.
You just want to vibe.
You just want to vibe.
That's what polyrhythms do, dog. Hell
Yeah.
I just want to touch on, like, everything in that song sounded like a reference to me. Like, the drums sounded like a reference to West African music. And then, like, the piano synth sounded like a reference to Minecraft to me.
Oh,
and then, like, the, like, really watery kind of muted section at the end sounded like the music for the underwater episode of BoJack Horseman.
Oh, shit. I have seen that episode, actually.
Yeah. It just sounded like it was just referencing a bunch of random things.
Huh.
It was great.
Yeah, it's good when you, like, it can, like, paint a picture or, like, make you think back to something. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that shit.
Well, I guess overall, I enjoyed, like, the creative rhythm that he had. That was another preconceived notion that I had with EDM, is, like, everything's either, like, boom, ba-dum, boom, boom, ba-dum, boom, or it's, like, bop, 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 bop. Everything's, like, one of two rhythms, but he had a lot of creative rhythmic stuff, you know, like, he had fucking polyrhythms, which you never hear in pop music.
The rhythms in this thing, the drum fucking, the patterns and the fucking programming is just bonkers.
It's quite good. I think I'm going to have to rate it, and I'm going to rate it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I do want to shout out Alarm, because that shit goes hard.
Yeah.
I love that song.
Does. When it, like, goes into, like, double time, like, kind of, like, cuts the, like, alarm song down and just, like, oh, yeah. It's good.
So good.
I also really like the, like, specifically the snares on that. They're really, like, they sound like, some sort of, like, futuristic button, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's good. I really like that one, for sure.
There was also this part at, like, the end and, like, the transitionary material kind of thing, and it was, like, it was playing a sample over of the like metallic-y drum part, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It was, like, taking that sample and it was playing it over itself, but, like, shifted out of time a little bit. And, like, that, again, is another part of, like, contemporary classical music. Like, if you've ever heard of, what's his name? I need to look this up. I don't like this music, so I don't remember his name. Steve Reich, that's his name. Steve Reich.
Do I know him?
You probably heard of him.
That sounds so familiar.
He's a very not very popular, but he's a contemporary classical composer. Kyle really likes him a lot. But his entire shtick is, that's what he does, is he takes, like, a set rhythm that's maybe, like, 2 or 3 bars long, and he plays it over itself, shifting it over by, like, an eighth note or something. And, like, that's his only compositional technique. And that's another thing that you never hear, like, in anything, but we heard it here at the end of that song. It was bonkers.
Yeah, it's Nicholas Jar is, like, he's very, very much, I think, I don't know, I can't think of anything that, like, really compares to, like, and this is, like, his, like, less experimental, like, project. It's just, like, I don't get it. Like,
Oh my god.
what is that? Is that...
I just got locked out of my bank account.
Whoa. That's not good.
What the fuck? Someone's trying to log into my bank account.
Oh, shit, yeah. That, you might want to fix that one. Uh-oh.
Looks like they didn't get into it.
Huh. Were you able to, like, report it as...
Oh, okay, no, it was something else.
Oh, okay. Cool. Whew! We'll keep that one in. Throw that one at the end. Put that in the blooper reel. Put that in your...
Where all my fucking identity gets stolen.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Love that one.
Oh, Unplugged.
Oh, compressed.
He's...
like...
I don't want to say... I don't know anyone else who makes music that sounds quite like him.
Yeah.
That's it. It's just, like, crazy.
I'm definitely going to add some of these to my playlists.
Yeah.
Let me go through the list here.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I'm definitely going to throw Alarm on there. Not an option.
Yeah.
Love that shit.
Yeah.
If Loving You Is Wrong was really good. I like that one. And for my last one, I gotta say, If You Can't Do It Good, Do It Hard. That one was very good too.
Yes. Yeah, good. And then do I rate it? I rate it probably right too. I think we
so,
both
yeah.
rated it. I personally would give this I think a 9 out of 10. I don't know. I really like this album. It's almost. There's no songs that I dislike. There's just a few parts that are slightly less interesting, or maybe the song isn't as captivating the whole time or something. But yeah, for me, I really like this. It's a 9. My favorites are definitely, Fantasy. I think is such a fucking cool song. So that's up there. Fantasy for sure. If You Can't Do It Good, Do It Hard. Defers. And man, I kind of had been not sleeping on that track, but I kind of just forgot about it because, a lot of the hits are up here, so if I'm listening to this album, but I don't get all the way through because it's 45 minutes long, I normally don't get to you. So I haven't really heard that song, I feel in a while, but I liked that a lot. That was really cool.
It was really cool.
That one was very loose, and the structure was not really song-like at all. It was just yeah.
It was it was a very good ending one, I think. It was very final.
Yeah.
How did you feel about our review? Are we wrong?
Are we right? Dislike this video and type an angry comment below.
If you have any suggestions, let us know.
I'm Compressed.
And I'm Unplugged.
And those are our thoughts on music and hugs. Thanks for listening. Fuck you, Jake.